David Simon's description of The Wire's fifth season as being about our capacity to recognize and address our realities could also function as the definition of storytelling. Storytelling is the communicative process of ordering a reality, be it fictional or non-fictional. It is one of the important ways in which we package and consume information.
If you walk through the garden.
The Wire is deeply interested in how we voice stories, often alternative ones, amid the dominant discourses generated by American capitalism. Can we express our socioeconomic realities effectively enough to affect change in our lives? Or are we eternally dictated by a grander narrative which reduces its human players? The diegesis of The Wire itself features many instances of storytelling. D'Angelo Barksdale falsely claims responsibility for the murder of Avon's girlfriend, and dramatically recounts the event to impress Bodie, Poot, and Wallace. The hearsay, which enwraps power figures such as Avon Barksdale, Marlo Stanfield, and Omar Little, elicits fear and awe. In this regard, storytelling is often intertwined with personal and cultural mythologies, providing the foundation for characters' nostalgia and reputations. Let's watch an excerpt in which Stevedore Frank Sabaka tells a story of his own.
Help my union. For 25 years, we've been dying slow down there. Dry docks rusting, piers standing empty. My friends and their kids like we got the cancer. No lifeline got thrown all that time. Nothing from nobody. You want to help us? Help me?
Sabaka angrily links himself to a history in which dock workers and the industrial city have slowly degenerated over the years, becoming marginalized. By vocalizing his narrative, he attempts to make sense of his arrest and justify his own actions of smuggling and bribery. An argument inheres in all storytelling, The Wire seems to suggest, in that a story is always idealized, invented, or produced. As Slim Charles says to Avon at one point, "We fight on that lie." If they can successfully engage an audience, stories can instill a sense of existential purpose. The fictional nature of The Wire reflects Simon's pessimism toward journalistic storytelling and its ability to generate reactions, as newspapers have increasingly assimilated into a discourse of bureaucracy and market value. Season 5, which expands the show's scope to include the media, is concerned with this very issue of storytelling. Watch the scene of an editorial meeting at the Baltimore Sun.
You don't need a lot of context to examine what goes on in one classroom.
Oh, really? I think you need a lot of context to seriously examine anything.
No. I think Scott is on the right track. We need to limit the scope, not get bogged down in details.
Here we are presented with one strategy of storytelling. Executive editor James Whiting and staff writer Scott Templeton suggest to write a microscopically contained narrative. To create an easily consumable story, and therefore generate an audience, they forego any outside influential contexts and merely focus on a singular, tangible problem in the classroom. As Gus Haynes will suggest, such an editorial stance cannot justly address the issue's complexities, and its implementation likely stems from suspect motivations.
To do what? To address the problem or to win a prize? I mean, what are we doing here?
Look, Gus, I know the problems. My wife volunteers in a city school.
As if that suddenly renders James Whiting the foremost expert on education. Look at Gus Haynes' expression here.
But what I want to look at is the tangible, where the problem and solution can be measured clearly.
There's more impediments to learning than a lack of materials or a dysfunctional bureaucracy.
But who's going to read that? What is this series about in a sentence? What's the budget line?
This could almost be a question about the show itself.
Johnny can't write because Johnny doesn't have a fucking pencil.
Augustus, I'm not as simple-minded as you might think. Now, what do you want, an educational project or a litany of excuses? I don't want some amorphous series detailing society's ills. If you leave everything in, soon you've got nothing.
The Wire is often heralded as a powerful example of televisual storytelling, and the effective depiction of its narrative world's utter complexity. Yet in our attention-deficient world saturated with simplistic one-off narratives seeking tidy resolution, an amorphous series detailing society's ills hardly seems a successful way to compel audiences. From education to crime, from law enforcement to politics, from labor unions to the media, that this network of systemic corruption and inequality alluded to in The Wire is so interconnected and sprawling, means that any attempt to express it in a consumable, cogent format will be problematic, if not impossible.
What is The Wire? It is a political tract masquerading as a cop show. I am proud that it is basically an argument that every day human beings matter less. All human beings.
The Wire's storytelling dilemma, then, is a conceit for how bureaucracy destroys human worth. The writing mantra, more with less, is, after all, the strategic response to the Baltimore Sun's slew of company buyouts. As Simon himself observes in a Washington Post article, in a city where half the adult black males are unemployed, where the unions have been busted, and crime and poverty have overwhelmed one neighborhood after the next, the daily newspaper no longer maintains a poverty beat or a labor beat. Again, in a digital age which demands up-to-the-minute news content, its producer has neither the time nor effort to investigate, only curate. This wham-bam thank-you-ma'am model of the press, Simon suggests, is deeply flawed. Without the extensive and intensive reportage that he argues for, just as in Season 5, the stories that matter are unknowingly reduced to one-liners in print. Omar, the leading drug robber in Baltimore, is mentioned in passing as a man murdered at a store, but his story is dropped due to a lack of printing space.
4 paragraphs will fill.
What's the homicide?
A 34-year-old black male shot dead in West Baltimore grocery. Juvenile suspect is being sought.
Right up the fire. Scratch the murder, we don't have room.
The context in which Prop Joe dies, the drug politics of the co-op, the territorial dispute with Marlowe, are textually tossed to the wayside, his murder earning only one sentence in the Metro pages. As in the scene shown earlier, the paper instead prioritizes marketable leads that will draw readers or win awards. On a metafictional level, by constructing a macroscopic narrative structure that switches between numerous settings and large ensembles of characters, The Wire reproduces the same sense of omnipresent institutionalism. A character does not navigate their existence by freely exercising their own thoughts and desires, but by operating in relation to a greater discourse. Those who attempt to resist the system often meet a classically tragic Greek end, as Simon himself has explained of Omar and Stringer. Crucially, an entirely macroscopic examination of urban decay would lose sight of its very human consequences. All this talk about the drug war's tyranny against the underclass is ineffective without having viscerally witnessed Bubbles' struggle to kick his addiction, or Bodie's repeated abuse at the hands of bad-tempered narcotics police. We need to directly experience, by extension through these particular characters, what happens to human beings when they matter less in the political scheme, in order for such an argument to have any sort of viable effect on the viewer.